Hey there! Thank you for taking the time to have a catch up with us on this Astranti theory revision video. As you can see by what's on screen, today we're going to be talking a bit about CIMA's ethical principles. So let's jump straight into some learning, shall we? Ethics, of course, are all about the judgments and understanding the difference between right and wrong. And we're talking about that today because, as an accountant, in your daily life or once in a while in your career, you may have to make decisions that are based on your own personal judgment rather than objective, always correct way to do something. And of course, when we're making personal judgments, it is possible for us to get it wrong. And the ways in which we get these things wrong might not necessarily be illegal, but they could be serious enough that they're deemed to be against the public interest. This is where CIMA's ethical principles come in, because as a chartered management accountant, you're expected to maintain the correct ethical behaviour, and the principles are in place to make sure that you understand what the correct ethical behaviour is. As I said, that is why we have CIMA's ethical principles. Firstly, let's talk a bit about where these principles come from. So you should really know about the IFAC. So that is the International Federation of Accountants, who are the global organisation for all accountants across the world. And they have something called the IFAC Code, which is their ethical principles to support and show accountants how to behave. The CIMA ethical principles were actually adopted based on these suggestions made by the IFAC, which says to you that these are probably pretty good suggestions to follow, as you can see on screen. So let's have a look at something known as CIMA's 5 fundamental ethical principles. So here are these 5 fundamental principles that make up a lot of CIMA's ethical guidance. Now we're going to go into each of these one by one. First, let's start with integrity. So integrity, it's actually all about being honest, being truthful, being straightforward in all of your professional and business relationships. This means that financial accountants need to represent an honest and true representation of the financial position of the business, be that when giving insights or showing financial statements to external stakeholders, basically in every aspect of their role. Next, we have objectivity, which is all about remaining objective. So that means not allowing bias or conflicts of interest or an external influence to override your professional judgment. So as an example, imagine that you are an accountant and the CEO of your company has come to you and they've asked you to amend the figures on a financial statement, and in a way that maybe isn't really 100% correct. And what they'll actually give you if you do that is they'll promote you. Now that causes a conflict of interest because you are torn between furthering your own professional career by doing something that's maybe unethical, or having this conflict with the CEO by doing the morally correct thing and not representing a false version of the financial situation of the business. The next one is a bit longer. It's called professional competence and due care, although we've just called it professional competence on screen. Now what we mean by this is we're talking about an accountant needing an ongoing commitment to maintaining a level of professional knowledge and skill. And this essentially means that accountants need to always make sure they are competent enough to do their job. So for example, if an accountant is preparing financial statements, they need to make sure they always have the skills and knowledge to be able to do that properly. So for example, that might mean they need an understanding of the relevant accounting standards, especially if those accounting standards have changed in recent years. Next we go on to confidentiality. And you may associate words like confidentiality with privacy, and you'd be right. This is all about respecting the confidential nature of information you acquire as part of your role. So when preparing financial statements, you as an accountant might have access to quite a lot of the company's financial information. They probably don't want you sharing with just anybody on the street or your neighbour or even a rival company. They'd rather keep that confidential, and you need to respect that. Now we move on to our last fundamental ethical principle, which is professional behaviour. This principle requires individuals to comply with relevant laws and regulations. So that might be accounting standards or laws in the country they operate specifically relating to companies. And these all need to be applied to financial statements, because whoever you are, no matter how ethical you are in your personal life or how good you are at your job, nobody is above the law. So there we have our 5 fundamental ethical principles according to CIMA. But before we close just yet, I'd like to introduce you to someone. This is Pashal. Pashal has just passed his CIMA certificate exams, and we're going to use Pashal to see how you may, or maybe don't, want to follow these 5 fundamental ethical principles. So first, let's give you a bit of context. Obviously, we know Pashal has just passed his CIMA certificate exams, and after doing that, Pashal has joined a company called Untitled Limited for his very first accountancy role. So upon arrival, he was asked to do his company's corporation tax return, and not wanting to seem as if he was not keen in his first week, he tells them he knows exactly what to do, and then he actually goes online to find out how to do it. He's got a party to go to that night though, so he can't really work it out properly in the evening, but he fills in the form as best he can so he can still get to that party on time. He's actually kind of hoped to save unethical some money. Wherever he's not quite sure what the right answer is, he's always chosen the option that keeps tax to a minimum in order to do that, because he really wants to keep his new employers happy. That seems like a really important thing to him. So he gets that done and he heads off to the party, where he goes and tells everybody about his amazing first day at work and the big profits his new company are going to make and how much he saved them. "My future is bright," he says to everybody at that party. So let's think about this in terms of our 5 ethical principles we just learned about. Is Pashal's future quite as bright as he said? Maybe not. So first, with integrity, Pashal should not have lied about knowing how to do a corporation tax return. It's dishonest, and that immediately undermines the trust his employer has in him. More specifically, he's actually now unable to do the job because of the lie, and that's going to affect everybody. With objectivity, Pashal has actually shown bias towards Untitled Limited, which is actually, yes, very unethical. Even though he works for them, accountants need to apply rules without any bias whatsoever, even if there's negative consequences for the company they work for. With professional competence and due care, Pashal really should not have done a corporation tax return if he doesn't know how to do it. He's admitted to himself, even though it's not to his employers, that he doesn't actually have the competence to do it. That's not what due care is all about. With confidentiality, Pashal's just wandered off and gone to a party and told everybody there about how profitable his company is. See, that is actually quite confidential information, things that the people at the party really shouldn't have known. Pashal's passed that on to a bunch of his friends. Who knows who they're going to tell next? This could end up quite badly for him and the organisation. Lastly, we have professional behaviour. Now, because Pashal doesn't really know what he's doing, and he's actually fudged some of the numbers to make Untitled Limited look better on their corporation tax return, he's not applied tax rules properly, and he's potentially committing a crime on their behalf. Definitely not ethical. So there you go. We've gone through our example of CIMA's 5 ethical principles, and we're zooming out. And we're actually zooming out more because, as you can see, this is just one small section of a great big tuition video that is provided by Astranti. Now, CIMA's ethical principles are actually really important to several exams at different levels of your CIMA studies. It's important for BA2, it's important for BA4. This particular tuition video you're seeing here is from E1, and it also comes up again in F1 and E3. So this is something you're going to need to know all the way through. Luckily for you, Astranti has full courses for all of these, not just E1 as you're seeing here. And each of these will have a study text that goes through all of the things you need to know with lots of examples in plenty of detail. We then have revision notes in case you want to condense these so you can learn them quickly, or you can refresh your memory right before your exam. We have hundreds of practice questions with full solutions. We have many tuition videos, much like the one you're hearing right now, but longer and in more depth, conducted by some of our talented Astranti tutors, who are also available to help ensure you pass your exam first time. And if that doesn't interest you enough, if you go to our website, www.astranti.com, you can actually get a free sample which will give you a taster of some of the materials we have available. So, that is all I have to say. Other than, if you really liked this video and you found it helpful, we would really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to our channel. Other than that, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me chat about ethics with you.